And we're back.
Wow. Pura vida, mi gente. How you guys doing out there? Thanks for tuning in once again. Appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. How's everybody doing today? Hope everybody's doing well. Today I wanted to continue reading from Fomenko's book, book one, The Issue with Chronology. Continue that investigation and continue our series, False Chronology. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off from last time. We finished reading from chapter 4. Today we're going to start at chapter 5 and continue from there. Again, thanks for tuning in, taking time to do that. Make sure to like the video, share the video. Hope you guys enjoyed today's reading. Pura vida, mi gente. All right, let me know if at any time the music is louder than my voice. Sometimes it is a little loud on headphones. People might hear the video on headphones. So let me know. Put it down. And again, we're going into the book from the series, the Anatoly Fomenko book series. He has History, Fiction, or Science. This is book one, The Issue with Chronology. Again, by Anatoly Fomenko. Check out part one. We read who he is. We went over a video he did. We went over his credentials, the whole story, how he figured all this out, him and his team. All right. And again, today we're going to go over to chapter, let me see, 5. Yep. We left off at chapter 4 last time. And it says here, the problem in dating the ancient sources, Tacitus, Empoggio, Cicero, and Barciza, Vitruvius, and Alberti, like Alberti Vespucci, yeah, Albert, the framework of the global Scaligerian chronology. Remember Scaligerian, a Jesuit, one of the main people who created our modern chronology. It was created by 3 people mostly, and 2 Jesuits, right? 2 of them were Jesuits. Scaliger was one of them. So the Scaligerian chronology is what we live off today. Was constructed as a result of the analysis of the chronological indications given by the ancient sources. It is natural that the issue of their origin should be of interest in this respect. Modern historiography manifests the paucity of evidence in what concerns the genesis of such ancient manuscripts. The general observation is made that the overwhelming majority of these documents surfaced during the Renaissance epoch, all right? That's when they started popping up, during the Renaissance, huh? After a reset, you mean? That allegedly superseded the Dark Ages. Huh, what Dark Ages? Remember the previous videos? All right, real quick, I forgot to mention it. Make sure to catch the whole series. This would be, let me see, part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is part 6 of my playlist called False Chronology. All right. So we went over the Dark Ages a lot. So there is no history of the Dark Ages. And it seems that the buildings and construction architecture from right before the Dark Ages gets picked up right from the people who came in medieval times. You know, they built right on top of that. There's no history of in between anybody. It never existed, guys. All right, so check out the whole series. So after the Dark Ages, how they started coming up with these chronologies, or these documents started popping up, huh? The discovery of manuscripts often happened under circumstances that forbade the analysis, which could allow the critical dating of such findings. All right? Nobody to debate it, nobody to verify. In the 19th century, two prominent historians, Hochard and Ross, published the results of their research, proving, listen to this, that the famous ancient Roman history by Cornelius Tacitus was really written by the well-known Italian humanist Poggio Bracciolini. All right, it's not ancient Roman at all. What Cornelius Tacitus? Is that a phantom and duplicate? It was actually written size. So you understand how big this is, right? So they make, so when they give us, hey, this was written by Tacitus, we thinking like, 100 AD or even BC, like early or late, 89 BC, anybody can Google that now, see what time he lived. But what I'm trying to say, they try to put it back in classical times when it was actually in the Renaissance era, in the 1500s, right? What do you say? Well-known Italian humanist. Actually, yeah, 1100s, 13 medieval times, late medieval times. That's when it was really written. So this medieval person is writing about so-called Romans. It wasn't the Romans themselves. The publications occurred in the years 1882, 1885, and 1878. Huh? The readers may turn their attention to 21, it says so, as a figure, I guess, which covers this problem exhaustively. We should just note that we deem the history by Tacitus to be an edited original, that is, a partial forgery and not a complete one. However, the events related therein have been misstated and transposed far back in time. The history of the discovery of Tacitus' books really provokes a great many questions. It was Poggio who discovered and published the opuses of Quintilian, Valerius, Flaccus, Asconius, Pedianus, Nonius, Marcellus Probus, some tractates by Cicero, Lucretius, Petronius, Platus, Tertullian, Marcellinus, Calpurnius Seculus, etc. The circumstances of these discoveries and their datings have never been related in detail. Listen, what's the origin story of these? Nobody knows. It actually never has been told. See more about the history of Tacitus' books in Chronology 1, Chapter 7, right? So he's going to get more deeper. In 15th century, famous humanists such as Manuel Chrysoloros, Hemistopleton, Bessarion of Nicaea, and some others came to Italy. They were the first ones to familiarize Europe with the achievements of the ancient Greek thought. Huh? They were the first to what? Start glorifying this created people? You mean these people who became Hellenized Byzantium gave the West almost all of the known ancient Greek manuscripts. Otto Neubauer wrote that major part of the manuscripts that our knowledge of the Greek science is based upon consists of Byzantine copies made 500 to 1500 years after the death of their authors. Listen, when Roman and Greek history is really being supposedly thrown into the public. It's not even by the actual authors, the people from that time, or so-called Greeks, or what we call primary sources. It's not even primary sources. According to Scaligerian history, the entire bulk of the classical ancient, in parentheses, literature, only surfaced during the Renaissance. In most cases, detailed analysis shows us that the obscurity of the literature's origins and the lack of documentation concerning its passage through the so-called Dark Ages leads one to suspect that none of these texts had really existed. Listen, before the dawn of the Renaissance, they didn't exist, really. Where's the originals? What's the story behind them? For instance, the oldest copies of the so-called incomplete collection of Cicero's texts are said to have been made in the 9th or 10th century AD. However, one instantly finds out that the original of the incomplete collection had perished a long time ago. In the 14th and 15th century, there is a surge of interest in Cicero. So, finally, about 1420, the Milanese professor Gasparino Barcisa decided to undertake a rather precarious endeavor of filling the gaps in the incomplete collection, or filling the gaps, in the incomplete collection with his own writings for the sake of consequentiality. However, before he could finish this volume of work, a miracle occurred. A forlorn manuscript with the complete text of all the rhetorical works of Cicero's becomes unearthed in a parochial Italian town by the name of Lodi. Barcisa and his students eagerly embrace the new discovery, artistly decipher its ancient, presumably 13th century, script, and finally produce a readable copy. Subsequent copies constitute the actual complete collection. Meanwhile, the irrecoverable happens. The original of the collection, the manuscript of Lodi, becomes abandoned, since no one wants to confront the textual difficulties it presents, and finally gets sent back to Lodi, where it disappears without a trace. Nothing is known of what happened to the manuscript since 1428. The European philologists still lament the loss. All right, hey, they don't have the originals, basically, what they're letting you know. Incidentally, the reverse or so-called Arabic reading of the name Barcisa, Arab, the so-called Italian, gives TSTSRB without vocalization. I don't know what that means, which is close to the consonant root of the name Cicero. Figures 1.28 and 1.29 show two ancient miniatures from a book of Cicero that was allegedly published in the late 15th century. In figure 1.28, Cicero is portrayed from the left, writing the tractate on the old age. In figure 1.29, Cicero is depicted from the right side, penning out the tractate on friendship. We see a typically medieval setting. Cicero and his interlocutors are wearing medieval clothes, which means that the author of the miniatures in the 15th century or later apparently didn't doubt Cicero to have been in his historical contemporary. Right? I guess this was what they're talking about. That's the high chat. All right. It says the Vita 12 Caesarium by Caius Suetonius is also only available as relatively recent copies. All of them held back to only ancient manuscripts, in parentheses, that is presumed to have been in Einhard's possession in the alleged year 818 AD, right? I guess during the Dark Ages. His Vita Caroli Magni is supposed to represent a diligent copy of the biographical schemes of Suetonius today. The original document known as the Fulda manuscript did not reach our time. Uh-oh. And neither did the first copies. The oldest of Suetonius' copies is hypothetically the 9th century text that was only brought to light in the 16th century. All right, you see when these things are really popping up and they don't have the originals. You guys see what he's saying? Other copies are dated to the post 11th century epic in the Scaligerian chronology. All right, just checking out the chat here. Make sure everything's going down swell. All right, guys. So, hey, moderators, if you see anybody that's out of topic, this ain't about flat Earth. You know, with all respect, just let's try to stay on topic, please. Thank you. We're not. If you want to have a side discussion with anybody, exchange emails, and you guys can talk in private about whatever you guys like to talk about, flat Earth or whatever it is. Okay, thank you. The fragments from De Viris Illustribus by Suetonius also appeared very late. The alleged dating of the latest fragment is the 9th century AD. This manuscript was discovered by Poggio Bracciolini in Germany in 1425. The Hersfeld manuscript did not survive. Nothing but several pages from the Tacitus part remain, but about 20 of its copies did. Those were made in Italy in the 15th century. The dating of ancient sources was performed. Listen. The dating of so-called ancient in parentheses sources was performed when? In the 16th and 17th century, right? So that's 1500s and 1600s when they're creating these chronologies going through the supposed sources that they don't even have the original still, out of considerations that are perfectly nebulous to us nowadays. They don't know how. The Arquitectura by Vitruvius was discovered as late as 1947. According to N.A. Morozov, Volume 4, page 624, the astronomical part of the book quotes the periods of heliocentric planetary circulations with the utmost precision. Vitruvius, an architect who is supposed to have lived in the 1st or 2nd century AD, knew these periods better than Copernicus, the astronomer. Furthermore, his error in what concerns the circulation of Saturn differs from the modern value of the period of ratio of, you see the number. Dodge the hijack with their luminaries. The error, and here we go. The math of the Most High. We should mark the magniloquent parallels between the books of the ancient Vitruvius and those of Alberti, the prominent humanist of the 15th century. See figure 1.30. One cannot fail to notice a certain resemblance of the names Alberti and Vitruvius, bearing in mind the frequent inflections of the sounds B and V. Alberti is known as a prominent architect, the author of the fundamental theory of architecture that is very similar to the theory of the ancient Vitruvius. Okay, so is one a phantom and duplicate? As well as the ancient Vitruvius, the medieval Alberti was the author of a voluminous tractate that included mathematical, optical, and mechanical knowledge, as well as from his theory of architecture. All right. The title of the medieval opus of Alberti's, the 10 books on architecture, coincides with its ancient analog by Vitruvius. Nowadays, it is supposed that the ancient Vitruvius had been his ultimate ideal that he emulated in the creation of his tractate. So they thought that he had copied because it's so similar. But what Fomenko's saying and what these authors and what he's quoting, right? He's quoting different people are saying is that they might be actually the same. The medieval Alberti might be the original from medieval times. Alberti's volume is written in an archaic manner. Accordingly, the specialists have long ago compiled tables comparing fragments of the works by Alberti and Vitruvius, which sometimes coincide word for word. word for word phantoms and duplicates. Historians explain this fact in the following manner. All of these numerous parallels unveil the Hellenistic Roman atmosphere that his thoughts evolved in. So the Book of the Ancient Vitruvius fits into the medieval atmosphere and ideology of the 15th century AD. Absolutely organically. Furthermore, the majority of Alberti's medieval constructions are an emulation of the ancient style. Pages 165, 167, 173, he creates a palace made to resemble a Roman amphitheater in its entirety. So the leading medieval architects fills Italian towns with ancient edifices that are nowadays considered an emulation of the classical age, but this by no means implies they were considered as such in the 15th century. The books are also written in the manner that will be made archaic much later. It is only after all of this in 1497 AD that the book of the ancient architect Vitruvius appears. All of a sudden it appears too. It wasn't found before that, occasionally coinciding with a similar book of the medieval Alberti word for word. That's where they copied from. They copied a medieval book and they created this so-called classical age book when everything inside is word for word copied. One feels that the architects of the 14th and 15th century did not consider their endeavors to be an emulation of the classical age. They were the classical age. The emulation theory was to evolve much later, in the works of the Scaligerite historians, who were forced to explain the numerous parallels between the classical age and the Middle Ages. One observes a similar situation with scientific literature. It would be expedient to remind the reader of how the acquaintance of the European scientists with the works of Euclid, Archimedes, and Apollonius occurred, since we can see the Middle Ages were the time when the revival of the achievements of ancient science took place. All of a sudden, all this ancient stuff is being revived, right? Revived, reset, revived, ancient. It's not from Greeks or Romans, though. It's technology. M.Y. Vygotsky, an expert in the history of science, writes that not a single solitary copy of Euclid's Elements has reached our times. Okay, there is no original. The oldest manuscript we know of is a copy made in 8888. Look at that number. And it's supposedly in the Dark Ages, right? In the Dark Ages, when there is no Dark Ages. They're making all this up, guys. Do you guys see the pattern? All these classical books that they never got their hands on, that never made it to our time, are all, a lot of them being supposedly done in the Dark Ages. And we already know that's a fake period. There's a large number of manuscripts that date from the 10th to 13th century. Shows a page from so figure 1.3 shows a page from a deluxe edition of Euclid's Geometry dated 1457. It contains a picture of a panoramic view of Rome. It is most remarkable that the book by the ancient Euclid contains a picture of the medieval Rome and not the ancient one. Hello. Why did he draw Rome how it looked in medieval times? Suppose the new Rome they had made in medieval times. All roads lead to Rome, huh? What Rome? Romani. So that's a big one right there. That, you know, it tells you what time period is really written. It's not no classical. Why did he draw a picture of medieval Rome and not the ancient one from his time? One can clearly see a Christian Gothic cathedral right in front. The commentators say that such Christian monuments as Ara Coeli are depicted here. One gets a clear implication that Euclid was really a medieval author. He's not from the classical times. He's not this ancient Greek scholar. IG, sorry, IG Bashmakova, an expert in the history of mathematics, informs us that even before the publication of the Latin translation of the Arithmetica by the ancient Diophantus, the European scientists have been using the algebraic methods of Diophantus, remaining unaware of his works. IG Bashmakova assesses the situation as somewhat paradoxical. The first edition of the Arithmetica is dated to 1575 AD. If Ptolemy's Almagest was instantaneously continued by Copernicus, let us remind the reader that the surge of interest in the Almagest publication immediately preceded the era of Copernicus. In detail, in Chronology 3, that's on book 3, we might get that drop later on. Diophantus' opus must have been continued by Fermat. So a lot of people are familiar with what he's talking about. If you're not, bear where he got a point where he's going to say the history of both manuscripts and printed editions of the ancient Archimedes follows the pattern already known to us. According to I.N. Veselovsky, all of the modern editions of Archimedes have been based on the lost manuscript of the 15th century. All right, so all these writings on Archimedes, remember Archimedes, Merlin, King Arthur, is really from what? The 15th century. That's when they've really been. And the Constantinople palimpsest that was found as late as 1907. Really? 1900s, huh? It is assumed that the first manuscripts of Archimedes reached Europe quite late in 1204. Okay. The first translation is supposed to have been made in 1269, and the complete text found in 1884, the 19th century. All right, so look how late all these classical writings are being found. It's coming out, guys. Come on. The first printed edition allegedly appeared in 1503, and the first Greek edition only in 1544. So is that Greek time, 1500s? You guys see, they never told us this stuff in school, and nobody really cared to ask, huh? None of the students learning this stuff in college say, "Hey, professor, anybody ever try to look for the originals and ask if, how do we know this is all true if we don't got the originals?" No, I guess they didn't. They just wanted to get their A and go to college, get paid, and read a curriculum and read that fake curriculum to other people and brainwash other people like they've been brainwashed, indoctrinated. And yeah, I'm talking to you, all you educators out there. Make sure you're teaching the real history. You got a big responsibility. Teach the children right, teach the youth correct, and learn yourself correct information and history. So the works of Archimedes enter scientific circulation after that. So in the 1600s, huh? Only figure 132, you can see an ancient portrait of Archimedes from his book Opera, dating to the alleged 15th century. We see a typical medieval scientist in his study. All right, so they're depicting medieval things when they're supposed to be ancient Greek stuff, right? Or ancient, even more classical. The commentators couldn't fail to have marked this. The study is represented in the Renaissance fashion. All right, yeah, we've seen this image before. Archimedes, huh? Conical sections by the ancient Apollonius was not published until 1537. Furthermore, Kepler, who was the first to discover the significance of conical sections, ellipses, and astronomy, didn't live to see publication of the complete works of Apollonius. The next three books were first published in Latin translation yet again. So the body of the work of the ancient Apollonius only got to be published in its entirety after the discovery of the objects that this ancient tractate deals with in Kepler's epoch. By the way, could the works of the ancient Apollonius just be an edited version of the Pole Copernicus? The name Apollonius is almost identical to Polonius, a Pole, a native of Poland or Polonia. All right, Apollonius is not Greek. Listen to what he's saying. It could just be meaning somebody who's from Poland or Polonia, from the Poles. Apollonius is not Greek. The astronomer Copernicus was the immediate precursor of the astronomer Kepler. Right? So that was a pretty interesting chapter. Chapter 5. We're going to go on to chapter 6. Again, we're reading The Issue with Chronology, the book by Anatoly Fomenko. We're in, just continuing on this series, False Chronology. If you just joined us, we're going to continue in chapter 6. It says here, Timekeeping in the Middle Ages. Historians discuss the chaos reigning in the medieval datings, peculiar medieval anachronisms. The Scaligerian chronological version was far from being the only one. It competed with versions that were significantly different. So there was other people trying to create other chronologies. So I was saying earlier, like 3 people. Bickerman mentions the chaos reigning in the medieval datings. Furthermore, the analysis of ancient documents show us that all concepts of time were substantially different from modern ones. Before the 13th and 14th century, the devices for time measurement were a rarity and a luxury. Even the scientists didn't always possess them. The Englishman, Valerius, was lamenting the lack of a clock that afflicted the precision of his observations of a lunar eclipse in 1091. The clocks common for medieval Europe were sundials, hourglasses, and water clocks, or clepsydra. However, sundials only were used when the weather was good. The clepsydra remained a scarcity. In the end, the 19th century AD, the 9th century AD, candles were widely used for timekeeping. The English King Alfred took them along on his journey and ordered them to be burned one after the other. The same manner of timekeeping was used in the 13th and 14th century. In the reign of Charles V, for instance, we're just talking about Stuart D. Charles, so-called black man. The monks kept count of time by the amount of holy book pages or psalms they could read in between 2 observations of the sky. For the majority, the main timekeeping medium was the tolling of the church's bell. One is to bear in mind that astronomical observations require a chronometer that possesses a second hand, while we learn that even after the discovery and propagation of mechanical chronometers in Europe, they had been lacking the minute hand for a long time. Right? You hear that? It has to be said that the ultra sophisticated chronological Kabbalah developed in the Middle Ages contradicts this impression of temporal observations. For instance, the very periods used for measuring time on Earth acquire an entirely different duration. When used for measuring the biblical events, Augustine equaled every Genesis day to a millennium, thus attempting to define the duration of the history of humankind. Such an inherent trait of the medieval historiography and its anachronistic propensity is of importance to us. The past is described in the same categories as the contemporary epic. The biblical and the ancient characters wear medieval attire. Listen. It happened in the medieval times. You think King David, Prester John, you think Joshua. I'm talking about the Old Testament Joshua. The one who went in with the sword, not on a donkey. Yeah, we're talking about medieval times. Yeah. Again, shout out to Condra for all the drop he's put out on this. So look what they're saying. These ancient and biblical characters are always wearing this medieval attire. A medieval moralist ascribes courteousness to the ancient Romans, which was a purely knightly virtue. The epic of the Old and the New Testament are not put in a direct temporal sequence. The fact that the portals of medieval cathedrals portray Old Testament kings and patriarchs together with the ancient sages and evangelical characters unravels the anachronistic attitude to history like nothing else. In the end of the 11th century, the Crusaders were certain they came to punish the actual executioners of the Savior and not their offspring. This fact is significant enough, and we shall come back to it later on. Modern historians base their observations on the Scaligerian chronology, believing that the medieval authors had attained a state of great confusion in what concerned both concepts and epics, due to their alleged ignorance, and that they had confused the ancient biblical epic with the medieval one. Listen, that's what they were saying. Medieval painters, for instance, kept portraying the biblical and the ancient characters in typically medieval costumes. However, another point of view is also viable, one that differs from the traditional love for anachronisms explanation, namely that all of the statements made by the medieval chronographers and artists may have reflected reality, all right? And we consider them to be anachronistic because we follow the erroneous Scaligerian chronology. We think they were supposed to look different from ancient. They're not supposed to be wearing medieval clothes, but we never noticed that. Nobody ever points that out. They're all wearing medieval clothes. For instance, it was assumed that the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation in the 10th to 13th century AD was the immediate descendant of the ancient Roman Empire that is alleged to have existed in the 6th century AD, according to the Scaligerian version. Mark the repercussions of the discussion that appears very odd in our time. Petrarch made the statement that he was supposed to have based on a number of philological and psychological observations that the privileges granted by Nero Caesar to the house of Austrian dukes in the 13th century AD were fake. All right, again, were fake. It needed proof in those days. For the modern historian, the thought that the ancient Caesar and Nero were the contemporaries of medieval Austrian house of dukes. Listen, house of dukes, Austrians, who are we just talking about Khazars? Mixing with these dukes Edomians? For the, all right. Again, so the thought of ancient Caesar and Nero were the contemporaries of a medieval Austrian house of dukes that had only commenced its reign in 1273 AD during Khazar time, that is, about 1200 years after Caesar and Nero, is naturally a preposterous one. No, that can't be. That can't be. However, as we see, the medieval opponents of Petrarch were of a different opinion, since it needed proof. Question above, or query above. E. Priester makes the following observation in the same notorious documents. All the interested parties were perfectly aware that the documents were blatant and shameless forgeries, all right? Forgeries, such as the modern interpretation of the fact, and nevertheless politely shut their eyes on this circumstance. Turn the cheek, huh? An abnormally large number of anachronisms that transpose ancient events into the epic of the 11th and 14th century is contained in the medieval German chronicles and texts. Detailed reference may be obtained from, all right, 469. So he got his sources, right? So I don't know if you guys understanding what they're saying. I'm kind of understanding, right? Is that there's a lot of things that don't make sense, that shouldn't be together. Classical stuff, ancient stuff, biblical characters with medieval characters and medieval attire, medieval buildings, like all this stuff is not making sense. The reader must be accustomed to believe in the famous, they call them anachronisms, right? when doesn't make sense. The reader must be accustomed to believing the famous gladiator fight only occurred in the distant ancient age. This is not the case, however. V. Klasowski, in having told us of the gladiator fights in the ancient Rome, proceeds to add that these fights took place in the medieval Europe of the 14th century as well. Okay? When was all this really happening, guys? For instance, he mentions the gladiator fights in Naples around 1344 AD, which were attended by Johanna of Naples and Andrew of Hungary. The medieval fights ended with the death of one of the fighters, exactly the way they did in the ancient times, right? Same story being duplicated. All right, that was chapter 6. We're going to go on to chapter 7, if you guys don't mind. Should I stop there or keep going? You guys enjoying it? Should I just keep going? Yeah, let's just keep going. Again, we're reading the book The Issue with Chronology by Anatoly Fomenko, part of my false chronology series here, guys. This will be part 6 of this series. We're going to get into chapter 7, and it says the chronology and the dating of biblical texts. The dating of religious sources are virtually woven out of obscurity and confusion. The biblical chronology and datings are of a very vague nature, since they are based on the authority of late medieval theologians, okay? Listen, that doesn't mean it's not real, but listen, the historians write the following. The true history of the origins of the books comprising the New Testament also fails to concur with the one backed by the church. Uh-oh, New Testament, huh? The order of the New Testament books, some of them, that is used nowadays is the direct opposite of the one set by the ecclesial tradition. The real names of the authors of medieval books remain unknown. Again, the real names of the authors of medieval books remain unknown. All right, Peter, I got you. As we shall learn, the consensual point of view about the Old Testament books preceding those of the New Testament also causes many doubts and contradicts the results obtained by modern empirical statistical dating methods. One should also consider the issue of the age of the biblical manuscripts that have reached our time. They turn out to be of medieval origin. Okay, listen, that's what I've been trying to say. Shout out to Con Drop. You know, it just happened. It just happened. Medieval times and Renaissance times. We're talking about biblical events, guys. The oldest, more or less complete copies of the Greek Bible are the manuscripts of Alexandria, Vatican, and Mount Sinai. All three manuscripts are dated paleographically, that is, with such an ephemeral concept as handwriting style used as a basis, to the second half of the 4th century AD. The codex language is Greek, so-called Greek. The least is known about the Vatican Codex. Nobody knows how the artifact manifested in Vatican around 1475. Listen, they're making they don't have no origin for these things are just popping out of nowhere, guys. These so-called ancient Greek codices, right, that are supposed to be the ones used to create the New Testament. Nobody knows how the artifact manifested in Vatican around 1475. The Alexandrian Codex is known to have been given to the English King Charles I by the Patriarch Cyril Lucaris in 1628. The Codex of Mount Sinai was only discovered in the 19th century, all right? Come on now, that's 1800s, by K. Tischendorf. So the three oldest codices of the Bible only surfaced after the 15th century AD. The reputation of their antiquity was created by the authority of K. Tischendorf, who had based his research on the style of handwriting. However, the very idea of paleographical dating apparently implies the existence of a known global chronology of other documents and thus cannot be regarded as an independent dating method in any way. What we know for certain is that the history of these documents can be traced as far back as 1475 AD. In other words, no other more or less complete ancient Greek Bible exists. All right. Again, remember, they're talking about the New Testament. They're talking about the Torah. So, I know a lot of you got questions. That's all in other videos. I got your answers in other videos. Just gotta catch up. Just gotta catch up. This ain't about religion. We're talking about history. This ain't just about beliefs. When we're talking about lineages and genealogy, when we're talking about biblical people who really existed, real historical events. When we're not just talking about the Romans from the Bible. No, we're talking about the what became to be known as historical Romans and historical Greeks, right? And all these medieval people. Yes. A lot of questions this raises, I know. But again, most high over everything, not religions. Okay, so I'm gonna read that part again. In other words, no other more or less complete ancient Greek Bible exists before 1475. They're saying among separate biblical books, the oldest ones are considered to be those of Zechariah and Malachi, dated to the alleged 6th century AD. Also, paleographically, the most ancient biblical manuscripts are in Greek. There are no Hebraic manuscripts of the Bible predating the, listen, the 9th century AD. All right, in existence. That's just facts right there. Although those of a more recent time, primarily the middle of the alleged 13th century AD, are kept in many national libraries. The oldest Hebraic manuscript is a fragment of the Books of Prophets and is dated to 859 AD. One of the two second oldest manuscripts is dated to 916 AD and contains the books of the prophets. The other is dated to 1008 AD and contains the text of the Old Testament. However, the first manuscript was dated to 1228 by the scribe. The so-called Babylonian punctuation of letters given here allows this text to be dated by the Seleucid era, which gives us 916 AD. However, there are no serious foundations for such a statement, and it is hence possible that the dating was given in years since Christ, in which case the manuscript would belong to the 13th century and not the 10th. The oldest Hebraic document containing the complete Old Testament can be ascribed to the alleged year 1008 AD. It is supposed that the biblical canon was agreed upon by the Laodicean Council in 363 AD, but no edicts of this council remain in existence, and the same concerns the previous councils. The canon was really made official by the new Trident Council called in 1545. They say, oh, it was written back in 300 AD, the Council of Nicaea, but there's no real history of that. And it says that officially it was, created by the Trident Council called in 1545, the epic of the Reformation, and continued until 1563. We can see a painting of one of the council sessions by Titian. So this is the Trident Council. A great many books were destroyed by the edict of the Trident Council, the ones considered apocryphal, namely the Chronicles of the Judaic and Israeli Kings. All right. Come on, body bag for the illusion. What did they get rid of? What did they get rid of and create their New Testament? They got rid of the Chronicles of the Judaic. Judaic, not Jewish, Judaic. Judah. The practices of Judah. And Israeli kings. The sons of Jacob. The kings of Israel. The ancient. Not Israelis, citizens. Talking about ancient. We shall never be able to read these books, You really think so? We just got to translate the Maya codices. So what do you guys think? But there is one thing that we can be perfectly certain of. They were destroyed, since they had described history differently from the books approved by the winning faction of Scaligerite historians. All right? Tell me that don't fit in with the whole reset, right? Old world. And then the reset comes. Oh no, this doesn't fit in with our new narratives. Let's not put this one in here. Let's destroy this one, keep this one, and rewrite this one a little bit. Okay? This is real stuff going on, guys. This is like really deep. I enjoy reading this kind of stuff because it helps me think about all my research. I'm like, wow, I can see it all happening. It's not just a conspiracy. Like, if you see what all the things we've learned the last years, you see that definitely there's definitely people gatekeeping. Definitely the winners were writing history, as it says here. And if something didn't fit in, you know, they left it out and they wrote, just like today, they're not our school textbooks, right? So whatever didn't, fit in or, was approved by the winning faction of the Scaligerite historians, it was destroyed. We should emphasize that there were a lot more apocryphal opuses than those certified canonical, all right? And he's not even talking about the apocryphal books we know of today. He's saying there was way more secret books or books not apt for the public. That's what apocryphal means. It don't mean no conspiracy thing. It don't mean it's pseudo. It just means secret, not apt for the public, not for the general public. There was a lot of books like that he's saying they destroyed, not just the ones we know. Just like the one we read the other day about, you know, Jared going messing up. Jared went down. He saw voluptuous things. So there were a lot more apocryphal posters than those certified canonical. And the most biblical datings are wholly dependent on paleography, which means that they are based upon a priori chronological knowledge of the Scaligerian school and would change automatically if a chronological paradigm shift occurred. Let us give an important example. In 1902, the Englishman Nash purchased a fragment of an Egyptian papyrus manuscript whose dating cannot be agreed upon by the scientists to this day. The final agreement was made that the text corresponds to the beginning of our era. Later on, after the discovery of the Qumran manuscripts, the comparison of the handwriting styles in both Nash's papyrus and the manuscripts allowed for the determination of a greater antiquity of the latter. Thus, one papyrus fragment whose dating cannot be agreed upon pulls a whole lot of other documents after it. Nevertheless, the dating of the Qumran scrolls provoked major dispute among scientists. The dating range was given from the 2nd century and until the epoch of the Crusades. The early AD dating is considered proven after 1962, when a radiocarbon research of the Qumran manuscripts was conducted. However, as we shall mention again later on, the radiocarbon method is really unsuitable for the dating of specimens. All right, radiocarbon is not suitable. Listen, been saying this for years. Oh, we gotta trust their radiocarbon dates, huh? So, the radiocarbon method is really unsuitable for the dating of specimens whose age falls into the span of 2 or 3 millennia, since the ensuing datings cover too wide a time range. This may reach as wide as a span of 1 to 2,000 years for specimens whose ages reaches 1 to 2,000 years. All right. Hey, much love, big bro James. Appreciate you very much. Thank you. Check out James, man. He got a lot to say. Check out his channel, his blogs. He's got a lot to say. James, it's on the chat right now. Check it out. Although dated the Qumran manuscripts to 68 AD, the American historians S. Zeitlin categorically insist on the medieval origins of these texts. All right, all this is seeming to really be coming out of the medieval times. That ain't ancient. we shall give a more detailed account of matters concerning the biblical manuscripts. All right, in Chronology 6 and book number 6. Okay, that's going to be a good read when we get to it, guys. Don't worry, we'll get to it. Shall we keep going? Yeah, should we keep going? We're gonna keep going, all right? Because I'm feeling it. I'm liking the reading, and I think you guys are enjoying it. You guys seem chill in the chat. So, again, we're reading the book, "The Issue with Chronology" by Anatoly Fomenko. All right. We're gonna get into chapter 8. It says here, difficulties and contradictions arising from the reading of old texts. How does one read a text written in consonants exclusively? The vocalization problem. The dating of other biblical fragments that we possess today also need attentive additional analysis. Attempts to read most of the old manuscripts, such as the biblical and the ancient Egyptian ones, often confront historians with severe difficulties. The first steps of our research into primordial language of the Old Testament brings us to the fact of paramount importance, which is that written Hebrew neither had signs for vowels originally, nor any other signs to replace them. The books of the Old Testament were written in nothing but consonants, right? The situation is typical. Ancient Slavonic texts, for instance, also come as chains of consonants, often even lacking the vocalization symbols and separation of individual words from one another, just an endless stream of consonants. Ancient Egyptian texts also contain nothing but consonants. The names of the Egyptian kings are rendered in modern literature in perfectly arbitrary manner, a la primary school textbook content. There is a plethora of significant variations that defy all attempts of classification, being a result of arbitrary interpretation that became tradition. It is possible that the scarcity and the high cost of writing materials made the ancient scribes extremely frugal, and the vowels were eliminated as a result. Quoting, "It is true that if we take a Hebraic Bible or a manuscript nowadays, we shall find a skeleton of consonants filled with dots and other signs that are supposed to refer to the missing vowels. Supposed to. Listen to this. Such signs were not included in the ancient Hebraic Bible. The books had been written in consonants exclusively and filled with vowels by the readers to the best of their ability and in accordance with the apparent demands of common sense and oral tradition." Imagine how precise the kind of writing that consisted of nothing but consonants would be today, when the combination BLD, for instance, could mean blood, bled, bold, build, boiled, bald, etc. Listen, it could people could read that, right, interpret it, all these words and mix them up together. They almost sound the same, right? Example, etc. So RVR could stand for river, rover, or raver. So this is what he's trying to say is when people started adding the vowels, a lot of times they were mistranslating and adding their own hijacks to it or interpretations to it, what they believed the missing consonant, what they believed the word was saying. Why? Maybe, I just thinking about it, if you don't know the people, if you're not from that lineage, or if you don't know the oral tradition, then you don't know what it's saying. So you're going to start making up a lot of the things and interpreting it how you want. So this is a deep one right here. And I always thought of that. Like, how does everybody, oh, you got the tentagrammation, Yahweh, or W, what is WHWH, right? So they add Yohewa, they add all these vowels. How do you know is that? But this is pretty interesting how he's breaking it down here and how scripture can get misinterpreted from the original, even though it still might sound the same a little bit. The vocalization aleatory quotient in ancient Hebraic and other old languages is exceptionally high. Many consonant combinations may be vocalized in dozens of ways. Gesenius wrote that it was easily understood how imperfect and unclear such writing method had been. T.F. Curtis also noted that even for priests, the meaning of the scriptures remained extremely doubtful and could only be understood with the aid of tradition and its authority. Robertson Smith adds that the scholars had no other guide but the actual text that was often ambiguous and oral tradition. You gotta have the oral tradition. If not, you're not gonna know what they're talking about if you're not from the people. If your grandfather, your mama, or anybody in your family didn't pass this down to you, where you can actually, oh, okay, yeah, I know what it says because my mom told me the story, so look, it's matching. They had no grammatical rules to follow. The Hebraic that they wrote and often allowed for verbal constructions that were impossible in the ancient language. Scaligerian history considers this status quo to have prevailed for many centuries, all right? Many people are interpreting. It is furthermore assumed that this paucity of the Hebraic Bible was only remedied in the 7th or 8th century of our era, when the Masoretes had processed the Bible and added symbols that stood for vowels, but they had no other guides but their own intuition. Listen, they didn't have the oral, they didn't have their ancestors telling them so they can try to really interpret the consonants. They just added their own vowels based on their own intuition and very fragmentary oral tradition. They not the people, and this fact is known perfectly well to every expert in the Hebraic language. What experts? Who they talking about? The Chazars? Driver points out that since the Masoretes and their efforts in the 7th and 8th centuries, the Jews have started to protect their holy books with the utmost zeal and vigor when it had already been too late to mitigate the damage done to them in any way. All right, already too much damage. Already we got so-called Greeks writing and translating things and creating Bibles. Huh? The result of this overzealous protection had been the immanentization of the distortions that had been made equal to the original text in authority. The common opinion used to be that the vowels were introduced to the Hebraic text by Ezra in the 5th century BC, when Levita and Capellus proved this wrong. All right, that's wrong. It wasn't from that time period. In the 16th and 17th century, when Levita and Capellus proved it wrong, France demonstrating that the vowels had only been introduced by the Masoretes, the discovery made a great sensation in the entire religion. If the vowels weren't received in an epiphany of divine inspiration, listen, being merely a human creation and a relatively recent one at that, how could one rely on the text of the Holy Writ? The debate that followed had been amongst the most heated in the history of the new biblical criticism and had carried on for over a century. Wow. Did you guys know about this? It has finally ended when the veracity of the new opinion was acknowledged by everyone. If such fierce disputes flared up around the biblical vocalizations in the 16th and 17th century, could this mean vocalizations, these very vocalizations were introduced very recently? Could this have happened in the 15th or 16th century? And since this vocalization version was far from the commonly accepted version, it had to encounter opposition, which may have been quite vehement. Yeah, you can't go against the Holy Roman Empire, right? It was only much later that the Masoret deciphering of the Bible shifted by Levita and Capellus into the 7th and 8th century AD, so as to give the biblical text the authority of antiquity, meaning they put it back in BC times. Remember, a lot of this is really happening in medieval times. The situation with the Quran must have been similar. We are informed that Arabic writing becomes developed further in the middle of the 7th century, when the first transcription of the Quran took place, right? 651 AD, right? The additional diacritic marks on above or beneath the letter were introduced in the second half of the 7th century for differentiating between similarly written letters for vowels and doubled vowels. Other sources tell us that the vocalizations were only introduced in the second half of the 8th century by Al-Khalil ibn Ahmed. Could all of this activity have taken place in the 15th and 16th century? Come on, guys. Is this all really happening in the Renaissance, during the Renaissance, so-called Renaissance, during after one of the resets? 8.2 of chapter 8, right? Yeah. The sounds R and L were often confused in the Middle Ages. We shall give some direct evidence of the fact that the sounds R and L were often subject to flexion. Amsterdam, among others, is a city whose name was affected by such instability and was called Amsterdam, 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 Amstelodamni. We should mention another interesting fact here. 1.34 shows the title page of a book on navigation published in Amsterdam in 1625. The name of the city is already given as Amsterdam, the way it is written today. However, the old engraving that one sees on the same page gives the old name in a rather peculiar spelling, Amstelredam. Both consonants are present here, and a bizarre combination of sounds is achieved as a result. This reminds us that the names of many European towns and cities had remained unstable until fairly recently, when they became immanentized in the printing press epoch. Numerous other examples of this phenomenon are given below. All right, they were called something else, is what you're saying? Is this very recent names? Amstelredam, look at that. That's what it says. Amsterdam and then Amstelredam. Yeah. Okay, let me see how long we got here. Yeah, we're gonna do it. All right, we're gonna do it. Don't worry. We're going to go on to chapter 9, guys. All right, we're just gonna go on. It says here, chapter 9. We're in the book The Issue with Chronology by Anatoly Fomenko. Problem in the Scaligerian Geography of Biblical Events. Archaeology in the Old Testament. 9.1. The vocalizations of quotidian lexemes may not be all that important to our purposes, but the consonant sequences used for names of cities, countries, and rulers definitely are. Hundreds of different vocalizations were spawned, some of which were arbitrarily localized in the Middle East due to the hypothesis that binds blindly events to that area exclusively. The archaeologist Miller Burrows expresses his unswerving trust in the correctness of the Scaligerian geography, writing that in general, archaeological works doubtlessly gives one a very strong confidence in the dependability of the biblical indications. One of the modern archaeological authorities, the American William Albright, wrote, albeit hastily, that one should not doubt that archaeology, in reference to the excavations in modern Palestine, listen, confirms just how substantially historical the Old Testament tradition is. Also, see, however, Albright concedes that the situation with biblical archaeology was so chaotic in the beginning of the 1949 period that the varying views on chronological issues could not have reached any sort of convergence at all, and that under those circumstances, one really could not have used the archaeological data concerning Palestine for illustrating the Old Testament. Honestly, they haven't really found anything there, guys. The one-time director of the British Museum, Sir Frederick Kenyon, categorically insists that the archaeology has refuted the destructive criticism of the second half of the 19th century. W. Keller even published a book titled, suggestively enough, And Yet the Bible is Right, which tries to convince the reader of the veracity of the Scaligerian interpretation of biblical data. However, here is some information from the eminent archaeologist L. Wright, also an avid supporter of the theory that the Scaligerian localizations and dating of the biblical events were correct. The overwhelming majority of findings neither prove nor disprove anything. They fill the background and provide a setting for history. Unfortunately, many of the works that can be understood by the average reader have been written with excessive zeal and desire to prove the Bible correct. The evidence is misused for making erroneous and semi-correct conclusions, right? They be trying to force it, is what they're saying, just because they feel threatened, like, oh, they ain't gonna believe us, they ain't gonna believe our Bible. Oh, we gotta, so they force it. But remember, where's the true Holy Land? That's why they gotta force it a lot of the time, guys. The pioneers of archaeology in Mesopotamia were C. J. Rich, A. H. Layard, and P. E. Bata in the 19th century, meaning 1800s is when they're really digging over there, huh? However, in order to get their research subsidized, they had to advertise their findings in a sensational manner, associating their findings with biblical towns. Listen, listen. And that answers a lot right there, guys. These people, these archaeologists who wanted to get funding for what they were doing over there in fake Cradle of Life place, over there in so-called Mesopotamia, they're like, yo, let's just say we're finding biblical towns. Let's just sensationalize it so we can get funding. They weren't over there, guys. That's what I've been trying to say. What Babylon? What Chaldea? Huh? Ireland? Huh? I told you guys, it's not over there where they're saying the Middle East is. It wasn't over there in ancient times. But what did they do? They had to sensationalize it, associating their findings with biblical towns in a rather arbitrary manner. But the accumulation of material evidence resulted in a significant quandary. Actual facts show that none of the Old Testament books have concrete archaeological proof of their Scaligerian dating and localization. Not where Scaliger and these people said it existed, talking about it was over there in Iraq, it was over there. Listen, this is deep right now. In the 20th century, right, 1900, El Woolley, the prominent archaeologist, performed excavations of a town that he tried to identify. He tried to identify as the biblical Ur. Well, we already know Urland, right? The Uri land, Iri land. However, it turned out that unfortunately, one cannot give satisfactory chronological datings of the episodes concerning the biblical Abraham within the span of the second millennium of Middle Eastern history. It's not over there. That's because Abraham was probably born in Ireland. The Scaligerian history insists that all events concerning the biblical patriarchs occurred precisely and exclusively on the territory of the modern Mesopotamia and Syria. That's what they told us all our lives, right? Nevertheless, it is immediately acknowledged that as to what concerns the identity of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, one can reiterate that the information obtained as a result of the most fruitful excavations in Syria and Mesopotamia was extremely meager or simply non-existent. Body bag for the illusion. I've been trying to tell you guys, and I've been asking these scholars and all these people that try to debate me, all these Pan-African, all these other people, and I tell them they haven't found nothing over there. Show me, and they never come back because there is nothing for them to show. I don't know if they realize it when they go try to debunk me and stuff, but there is no archaeology of what they're saying being found over there, guys. And shout out to people like Paul Cook and all these people showing you that's not ancient megalithic stuff that's over there. That's geopolymer, concrete, more modern, most likely medieval times, old world technology. So again, none of that biblical stuff over there where they're looking for it in so-called Mesopotamia it's non-existent, guys, non-existent. One might wonder just how justifiable it is to search for traces of the biblical patriarchs in modern Mesopotamia. Furthermore, Scaligerian history is of the opinion that all of the events involving the biblical Abraham and Moses occurred in the territory of modern Egypt. All right, so again, Tosh the hijack. What do you mean, Judah? Judah? What you mean Mount Nebo where Moses was what? Yeah, he went to the real Mount Nebo. What you talking about? Over there in modern Egypt. That's why you gotta say modern Egypt, because it's not the ancient one. It is evasively stated that the historical intensity of this tradition is not confirmed archaeologically. They have never found anything to prove Moses was over there, or Abraham, or any of those people, or that that was the Egypt that got the curses, that that was the actual Nile in the Bible, which means great river in Greek, which is the same thing, the word Mississippi, which the Mississippi River is named after, right? It means great river in the Ojibwe Algonquin word. It means the same thing. And we already know that's the true Nile, great river. But you see how all this coincides, all this investigation with Anatoly's research on chronology, right? When it comes to archaeology, it's not there. It's not in Egypt. It's not in Mesopotamia. It's not in none of those places. They haven't found it. You don't think all these years, they wouldn't have found anything already and broadcasted it and put it in our face? But it's historically plausibility is together with an account of the circumstances that may have been the setting of the patriarch's biography. We are also warned that one is to be cautious in one's use of cultural and social indications for dating purposes, since we have the principal concepts in what regards the era of the patriarchs. One needs to possess a certain flexibility in the fixation of chronology. Yeah, he's saying, stop guessing, you don't know. As we shall soon see, the flexibility may stretch as far as hundreds and even thousands of years. Uh-oh, remember what part one, what we learned in the first couple parts? There's three separate timelines here. They've split a timeline back 3,000 years, another one 1,800, another one 1,000, another one 300, a couple different duplicates and phantoms. Yeah, so we ain't talking about no Babylon or none of that stuff here. Whatever you're talking about in the next months. All right. As we shall soon see, all right, so W. Keller proceeds to tell us that Egypt remains indebted to the researchers. In addition to the fact they found nothing about Joseph, neither documents nor any other traces of his time have been discovered. All right. How is that possible? Come on, man. King Joseph? You mean Joseph from the tribe of Israel? You mean second to Pharaoh because he started interpreting his dream and helped them during their time of what is it with their dryness, right? I forget what that called. When they had no crops, he was able to help them store corn when they had plenty, right? So they're no guys, you already know the corn. Come on, man. Corn is from America. That's what they were storing. That's what they were growing for 7 years. They stored the corn and then they had abundance even in the middle of time when they had droughts and stuff, when they couldn't grow food for 7 years. That happened here in the Americas. That's why they can't find that over there. Yeah, that was over here. Of course, you ain't gonna find that over there. Famine and drought, you know. Yeah, thanks, guys. Don't go nowhere. You know we're about to link up after this. All right. Egypt remains in debt in what concerns Moses as well. In this case, one may wonder yet again about the possibility of biblical events having taken place in a different country. Come on now. Mic drop. If I had the mic drop, I would have done it, all right? In a different country. How about in the real Holy Land in Amaruka, in ancient America, huh? And Tamari, huh? Huh? Listen to what he's saying. Listen to what he's saying and what we've already proven. It might have been in another country actually, or the whole biblical events, all this biblical stuff going on. That's why even be telling people that are close to me in certain circles, and I'd be like, hey, remember when you're talking about Babylon and all this other stuff, or you're talking about Romans or Greeks, and yeah, you gotta, hey, picture America. It might be happening in America. Yeah, so Salah, go be a herd, go be into your religion somewhere else, hurt somewhere else. We're talking about history, facts over feelings, all right? We don't need to go to anybody because people are biased too. People are biased to their religions, all right? And sometimes it blinds them from historical stuff. Like he was saying earlier, a lot of people trying to force it and prove biblical stuff, showing fake things, and they just make themselves look bad. All right. Yeah. So you don't want the. We'll get to the we'll get to the Islamic history, the origin of that. We'll get to that in future videos. Don't worry. That's where we're going. Why you think I'm reading all this stuff? I'm prepping you. And not just me. You see, I'm just reading things that's already been researched by others. The archaeologist Albright, an avid supporter of the Scaligerian interpretation of the Bible, has nevertheless got to agree with the fact that the previous concept of the exodus of Haran from the Chaldean Ur found no archaeological evidence except for the actual city. Furthermore, it turned out that the very location of Mount Sinai is unknown. Oh, really? Hey, guys, they don't know what Mount Sinai is, but yet they want to say it's over there. They still want to say it's over there, and they got these plaques and these things that says Mount Sinai, biblical place. But they don't know. They're making it up. Another complication is that the Bible often states Mount Horeb to have been the place where the revelation was given. If we are to take the biblical description of the natural phenomena accompanying said procedure seriously, one has to presume the mountain to have been a volcano. Listen, a volcano. Oh man, we just keep getting drop after drop today, guys. So is there any volcanoes over there? Where do you find a lot of volcanoes? I know there's volcanoes all over the world, but come on now. Come on now. There's like 8 in Costa Rica alone. All right. The problem is that the mountain called Sinai nowadays has never been a volcano. Listen, did you guys know that? This is a big one right there. So Mount Sinai was a volcano, huh? Huh? Some archaeologists place Sinai in North Arabia, claiming that it was located in Midian, near Kadesh. But none of these mountains were volcanoes either. Okay? The Bible says that the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. Scaligerian history locates this event somewhere in modern Mesopotamia. The first idea that one gets in this respect is the assumption of a volcanic eruption. But there are no volcanoes in this area. Come on, man. Come on, use your logic, guys. Break the spell. Empty your cup. Get out of your feelings and your personal biases. All right, Salah. Let's go. It seems natural to search for these cities in some area that does have volcanoes, all right? We should be looking in areas that have volcanoes. However, the search is still conducted in Mesopotamia with great effort and no results whatsoever. It's on purpose, guys. They just waste public funding and all this other stuff. They do all these TV shows, the History Channel, to take your attention from the real Holy Land. And finally, a solution is reached. The southern part of the Dead Sea appears to conceal some debris resembling tree trunks under 400-meter layers of very salty water or poor transparency. This has sufficed for the American archaeologist D. Finnegan, as well as W. Keller after him, to claim that the Valley of Siddim, together with the charred remains of both cities, had submerged, all right? So because they found certain things, this is what they're saying. They made up a whole big conjecture. Most of our history that is accepted as truth, guys, a lot of it, most of it is conjecture. What they teach us in school, a lot of it is conjecture and theories. Out of Africa theory, Bering Strait theory. Yo, Matt, you already know, man. So, the Bible scholar and historian Martin Knopf states explicitly that there is no reason to ascribe the destruction of the cities found by the archaeologists in Palestine to the Israeli invasion in search of the so-called Promised Land. Listen, it doesn't mean it's the same places described in the Bible. As it was noted above, from the archaeological point of view, the entire Scaligerian interpretation of the conquest of Canaan by Joshua, the son of Nun, becomes suspended in thin air. All right, because of their fake fake histories. Yeah, it becomes all fake. But where is Canaan, the real Canaan, the Holy Land, the real Joshua? We're talking about Old Testament. And what do you mean, son of Nun? Who's Nun? You mistranslating that? As you were explaining earlier with the consonants, remember, guys? Nun in Paleo Hebrew means seed, heir, continuation, or son. That's what Nun means. The son or the continuation. Joshua, the continuation. Look it up. Look it up. Paleo Hebrew, the letter N. Look it up. Nun. And you're going to see that the glyph, the pictograph, is a sperm. There is no Nun. That's a mistranslation. Could Joshua be the son of Moses? You know, I throw things out there, guys, but you know, I do a lot of research and thought on the stuff when I say it. He had a son named Eliezer. Who's Eliezer? Eliezer. Are we conducting our search for biblical promised land in the correct place? Listen, man, Anatoly got the drop. I don't care what a lot of people say. I don't know, a lot of people mad because I'm reading Anatoly Fomenko's book. Oh, he's been debunked. What do you mean he's been debunked? He's quoting so many sources. He's not just writing this and just making it up like all these chronologists from the 1500s, Gallagher and all of them, and like these Pan-Africans making things up. He's using a lot of sources and he's giving you a lot to think about that you can verify and follow up on to see what he's saying. Remember his credentials. Again, he's asking you a real question. And if you've been watching my videos all these years, I'm going to ask you, are we conducting our search for the biblical promised land in the correct place? No, we haven't been. Could the troops of Joshua have been predominantly active elsewhere? Yes, they were. Cusco, is that where he went? Joshua invaded Cusco, the city of David. He got it back from the Jebusites. Come on. It is further written that no archaeological proof of any biblical report of the Epic of the Judges exists to this day. All the judges' names contained in the Old Testament aren't known from any other source and weren't found in any archaeological artifacts from either Palestine or any other country. This concerns the names of the first kings, Saul, David, and Solomon. All right? King David, because they're looking in the wrong places, guys. They haven't found none of that. And when they finding all this archaeological stuff here in the Mayas and all this stuff they can't interpret, how do you know it wasn't in there? How do you know they haven't found it? How do you know they already know they did and they're telling us lies? Oh, we haven't found it. Oh yeah, actually it's over there in Palestine. Yeah, we found it. Yeah, where is it? Oh, it's in the basement, in the museum. You know. Don't worry about it. Yo, mad preacher, let them know where the Milo is, yo. It's right there in Cusco. The Millo, the roundabout on Sacsayhuaman where they held, that was a tower where they held, that was a fortification, right? This in the city of David where they held the Ark of the Covenant once while they were fixing the Temple of Solomon. The Milo, come on now, the Miyu or Muyu is still there. All right, sorry guys, I'm just reading. I get a little excited when I read these kind of things for all the years of research, and I'm just reading the chat. I enjoy people that follow along and learn, and we learn together, and we're like kind of seeing a bigger picture. Scaligerian history convinces us that the Noah's Ark had moored. Moored means, yeah, to navigate to Mount Ararat in the Caucasus. So that's what the Scaligerians tell us. Hey, landed up over there on that side. What if it ended up here in North Carolina? Huh? Was that on Pilot Mountain? Oh, we got future videos on that. Oh, don't worry, guys. Everything's about to get real interesting. Werner Keller assures us that the Armenian village of Baisit still keeps the legend of a shepherd who saw a large wooden vessel on the mount. All right. So I know they got their whole investigation. They had the documentaries from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I know, guys. I've seen all that growing up. I've been into history more than a lot of you guys who just got into history. I grew up into history. I loved history. Okay. I was interested. I watched all that stuff. I watched all these documentaries. I did believe the Ark was over there until I realized this was the old world. Could it have been over there and then maybe they walked over here back? Maybe. But then we got other stories. And also you gotta understand the gopher wood and all the wood, all these wood, these cedars of God, all these ancient trees were from here. It's only found in Florida and in other parts of the world, the gopher that they built the ark with. All right? Get hit with the research. So, the Turkish expedition of 1833 mentions some ship made of wood that was seen over the southern glacier. Keller proceeds to tell us that in 1892, a certain Dr. Nuri was leading an expedition in search of the sources of the Euphrates and saw a fragment of a ship on the way back, which was filled with snow and dark red on the outside. The Russian aviator officer Rokovitsky claimed to have seen the ark's remnants from his aeroplane during the First World War. Caesar, or Tsar Nikolai II, is supposed to have commanded an entire expedition there, which had not only seen but also photographed the remains of the ark. The American historian missionary Aaron Smith from Greenboro, an expert in the problem of the Great Deluge, wrote a history of Noah's Ark mentioning 80,000 publications on the topic. Finally, a scientific expedition was arranged. In 1951, Smith spent 12 days on top of Mount Ararat with 40 of his colleagues. They found nothing. Again, they found nothing. The place they called Mount Ararat today, that's not the original. With 40, all right, they found nothing. Nevertheless, he made the following claim: even though we failed to find so much as a trace of Noah, my trust is in the biblical tale. I still believe the Bible, so I had to have been here. Okay, the Bible don't lie about Mount Ararat, so I'm still gonna believe it was right here. See, that's the ignorance, because we're afraid to say, well, the Bible can't be wrong. Well, because that's not, first of all, that's not the Holy Lands. That wasn't Mount Ararat. That's not the original Mount Ararat. That was just named Mount Ararat. But people want to believe it anyways because they're afraid to say, well, the Bible's wrong. So I trust the Bible tell, he says, of the deluge had only become firmer. We shall yet return. In 1952, the expedition of Jean de Riquier obtained similar results. This somewhat anecdotal account here merely scratches the surface of the problem of geographical locations that is so acute for Scaligerian chronology, as it were. So this is very deep, important, something I didn't think about. So Scaliger didn't just mess up chronology and create a fake one. While he's doing that, he's also putting fake locations around the world. Ancient places he's locating somewhere else. So he was part of the big problem of hiding the Americas through history. This somewhat, okay, so we got it. So Scaliger did the same. So the problem of geographical locations that is so acute for Scaligerian chronology, as it were. Herbert Hagg, in his foreword to Cyrus Gordon, Historical Foundation of the Old Testament, credits the author with the following: his aim is an apologetic, which makes him quite unlike other authors that drove down the book market in paperbacks, attempting to prove the Bible by jumbling together all sorts of sensationalist proof received from ancient Oriental sources. All right, so they were reaching, forcing it, and they had no sources. It's just some mystery sources they always had, but they never showed them. Various museums, institutes, and universities sent expeditions to the Middle East for biblical excavations. Great sums of money are invested in such excavations, and a great many special societies and funds have been founded with the sole purpose of conducting archaeological research in the Scaligerian biblical countries. The first one of these institutions was the Research Fund of Palestine, founded in 1865. Currently, there are about 20 similar organizations in existence. Among them, we find the American Institute for Oriental Studies, the Jerusalem affiliate of the Vatican Institute of Bible Studies, and the Israeli Research Society. No other, listen, so who's in charge? Caesars and Vatican. Of course, they're not going to come look in the Americas, right? No other region of the planet has been studied by archaeologists with such intensity as the Scaligerian biblical territories. Listen, come on, it's on purpose, guys. A great variety of literature is published on this subject as well. Special magazines, monographs, atlases, and albums for the popularization of biblical archaeology. The biblical topic is often given priority at the expense of other archaeological issues. The prominent Soviet historian who studied the antiquity, academician V.V. Struve, has got the following to say about it. The excavations in Egypt and Babylonia were only of interest to the bourgeois science since they could be linked to Palestine. The middle class, listen, Zionists, are you talking about Zionists? Because it links them to Palestine, supposedly, in order to find the funding needed for the excavations. The historians had to prove that an ancient copy of the Bible could be unearthed as a result of their research, or the sandals of Moses may have, and then the monies were provided instantly. All right. Yeah. The following example is very representative. Hold on, guys. The following example is very representative. In the early 20th century, of a tablet archive was found in the city of Umma, Mesopotamia. But since Umma isn't mentioned in the Bible, and no enthusiastic entrepreneur could identify it as some biblical town, the excavations in Umma were stopped, and the archive scattered without even being studied. The tablets were sold to Parisian collectors for 1 franc per piece. Archaeology, as well as historical science in general, can find no proof to the biblical legend about the Egyptian slavery of the Jews. All right, not over there in that place. That's the whole hijack. The Egyptologist Wilhelm Spielberg tells us that what the Bible reports about the plight of Israel and Egypt isn't any more of a historical fact than the accounts of Egyptian history related to Herodotus. Again, because they don't find that over there. And this is why there's a lot of atheists. This is why there's so much separation. There's a lot of people not followers of the Most High because they, oh, the Bible's fake. This is why, guys. Because they've made a whole fake biblical narrative based on false biblical places and biblical people that are in the wrong areas of the world and all this other stuff, right? But once you know yourself and where you're coming from, you know, you'll find that connection with the Great Spirit, Most High, the Great Spirit. So yeah, a lot of that happens because of that. V. State wrote that anyway. It is clear that the research concerning the Pharaoh, under whose rule Israel moved into Egypt and left it, represents nothing but the juggling of names and dates void of all meaning. Let us repeat our question. Could an altogether different country be described by the name of Egypt? Come on now, guys, listen to what Anatoly Fomenko was asking when he was writing these books. Come on now, he was concluding this based on his research. And that's when you do real research, guys. When it comes to history, you're going to start concluding this. When you get out of your biases and you start following the narratives and the mainstream stories and sources, right? And start reading your own primary. So you start asking this same question. Could Egypt be somewhere else? Yes, Egypt was here in America, guys. Ameri, the beloved land. Ancient Egypt. Egypt is a Greek word. Temple of Ptah. The Bible lists a great many geographical locations that the people of Israel visited during their 40 years of wandering after the Exodus from Egypt. In parentheses, the archaeologists still fail to find these locations where the Scaligerian history places their biblical descriptions, all right? So I'm glad they brought that up. So they're supposed to be lost for 40 years in this little small area of the desert right there where they're putting them over there in the Middle East, and they can't understand how the Israelites were lost for so long in that little area. It's literally like saying the Most High was lost. How can the Most High be lost, guys? Think about that. It's not because they were lost that they took so long, because that's the whole story, like why they took so long. It's, oh, because they were lost. No. What if they were going from, like, let's say, from Ohio all the way to like Mexico, or from Ohio all the way to like Peru, Cusco? Wouldn't that take like 40 years maybe? And wouldn't you settle in different places along the way, pueblos, and then vanish and without a trace and build temporary spots in cities, pueblos? All right. So yeah, we've broken this down in many ways, guys, and you gotta check out the codices, the Mexican and their stories, the migration stories to their promised land. It fits the migration of the Israelites out of Egypt. All these stories, we've gone over it before. All right, so if you're new to my channel, make sure to catch up to the older videos. Work your way up. Work your way up. All right? You already know, Terabel. You already know. Much love. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Thanks for tuning in. And I think this chapter's almost done, so we're almost out of here. So I hope you guys enjoyed it so far, just reading today. All right. So we're gonna keep going. No problem. Thank you. The Bible lists great many geographical locations that the people of Israel visited during their 40 years of wandering after the exodus from Egypt. Again, they haven't found any of these places over there where the Scaligerian history places their biblical descriptions. Wright says that the few sites on the way to Mount Sinai can be identified with any degree of certainty. B. State wrote that checking the itinerary of Israel as much sense as, say, tackling the way of the Burgundians, returned from King Etzel, as described in the Nibelungenlied. The Egyptologist W. Spielberg quotes this statement saying that we can still sign under every word of states and that the depiction of events following the Exodus, the listing of the sites where stops were made, the crossing of the desert, all of this is fiction because they haven't found it, right? Because they haven't found it, even though in the Americas we got ancient books of the caciques, right? The Maya caciques, writing about how they parted the sea. Their prophet with the staff parted the sea, their red stick. Come on now. In the real Red Sea, we're talking about the Gulf of California, the real Red Sea. That's why they ain't finding it over there. And it says here, no traces have ever been found. All right. Many sites were considered to have been on the itinerary, but none have been found. All right. The biblical account of the destruction of Jericho is well known. One of the Arabic settlements in the Middle East had been arbitrarily identified as the biblical Jericho, whose walls were destroyed by the sounds of the horn. The settlement has been subject to thorough excavations since the endeavors of Selin, Watzinger, and Garstang in late 19th century. There were no results. Again, guys, there was no results. They didn't find anything. Come on, how many times they're gonna do this? They've done this many times, and everybody still believes. Everybody still believes it's all over there. In 1952, an Anglo-American archaeological expedition led by Kathleen Kenyon ventured to continue Garstang's research. No justifications for identifying the excavated towns as Jericho have ever been found. Why did they name that Jericho? Is what he's saying. Why are you telling us that is the ancient Jericho if you have no proof of it? And this is what I've been trying to tell a lot of you guys. When you watch these shows and they're showing, oh, this is the ancient city of the Midian. No, that's the hijack. They haven't found no evidence. They're just saying that. It's conjecture. Or on purpose. The Bible says that after Jericho, the Israelis destroyed the city of Ai. AI, artificial AI, yeah, Joshua destroyed AI, yep. The site where the city was supposed to have been located according to the calculations made by the historians has also been subject to fundamental research. Yet again, the results have failed to satisfy. There is no evidence of any AI over there, okay? The German archaeologist and specialist in biblical history, Antoine Jirku, expresses his grief over the futility of the Jericho excavations and proceeds to describe those of AI as afflicted by an even greater discrepancy between the report of the conquest of AI that ensued and the results of the excavations. All right, he's like, man, he's feeling bad. He's like, man, I wasted my time. I wasted my time. According to the Bible, the capital of Judea, Judea, in the region in the reign of King Saul, was the city of Gibeah. The historians have given birth to a hypothesis identifying it as the ruins excavated in the Tel El Ful Hill, 6 kilometers to the north of modern Jerusalem. You hear what he just said? They found some ruins somewhere near Jerusalem, and they hypothesized, they guessed, they made it, they supposedly educated. It's not educated at all because that's not even the Holy Land, but they're guessing, they made it up, is basically They said, okay, yeah, here's the capital of Judea right here. Here's some rocks right here. However, it is conceded that not a single inscription was found in town, and no clear evidence that the ruins belong to Saul's palace or tower that he built. All right, but had Saul's palace really been built there? Come on now, palace. Conclusions. Archaeological research shows that the books of the Old Testament have no archaeological proof of their localization and dating as suggested by the Scaligerian tradition. Thus, the entire Mesopotamian biblical theory becomes questionable. Come on, guys. Body bag for the illusion. Mic drop. It's all fake. What you mean Mesopotamia is the cradle of life? Man, show me the proof. You don't got none. 9.2 Archaeology in the New Testament. The traditional localization of the events described in the New Testament isn't any better condition. Now, this is going to get even worse now. We're talking about New Testament. The lack of archaeological proof of the Scaligerian localization of the New Testament is explained by the fact that Jerusalem was destroyed in the years 66 and 73, and that the Jews had been forbidden to come anywhere near the city. That's why there's supposedly, right? Scaligerian history is of the opinion that Jerusalem can be located at the settlement that the locals call El Quds. So they're lying, they're making this up right here, whose site used to be perfectly barren before, also known as Aelia Capitolina. It was after the passage of some time that the ancient Jerusalem was reborn here. Reborn, they made a new one. Listen, the historical remnants of biblical times shown to tourists today. Listen, come on, this is a big one right here. Money back, yo. Oh. He's about to drop a big one. Ready, guys? Everybody's been asking me, what's that wall they're praying to? The historical remnants of biblical times, in parentheses, right? In parentheses, shown to tourists today, such as the Wailing Wall, etc., do not hold up to even minimal scientific criticism in full absence of historical and archaeological proof. All right? That's not no David's Wall, guys. Who knows what they praying to? These Chazars. Figure 1.36 shows an ancient miniature allegedly dating from 1470 that depicts the pillaging of Jerusalem by the Syrian king Antiochus Epiphanes. As we can see, the medieval author of the miniature didn't hesitate to represent Jerusalem as a typically medieval town, okay? With Gothic buildings and towers and all the warriors wearing medieval plate armor. Jerusalem and medieval, looking like a medieval town. Look, guys. This is probably a drawing of Cusco when the Spanish got there. That's probably what they're really depicting. One must emphasize that other versions exist apart from Scaligerian. The Catholic Church, for instance, has been claiming the very house that Virgin Mary had lived in and where Archangel Gabriel appeared before her. All right, dodge the hijack. To have been located in the Italian town of Loreto since the 13th century, which means that the Catholic version transfers a part of evangelical events to Italy. The earliest document concerning the Loreto house is the bull issued by Pope Urban VI, dated to 1387. In 1891, Pope Leo XIII issued an encyclical in celebration of 600 years of Loreto's miracle. Thus, the miracle is dated to 13th century AD. Historians mark that Loreto remains a holy pilgrimage place for the Catholics to this day. All right, it's just another tourist spot, just like modern Egypt today, guys. I told you those are all theme parks. It's just a theme park. This is a Catholic theme park they got there, with all respect. All right, most high over everything, not idols, not places, not these buildings, not what the. No, that's not. All right. A.Y. Lensman tells us the following in Read the Search of St. Peter's Sepulchre, for instance. In 1940, the excavations sanctioned by Pope Pius the 12th were commenced on the Vatican crypts, and their peak fell on the post-war years. In the late 1940s, a solemn statement was made by the press, especially the Catholic press, since the excavations must have been expensive, that not only the burial spot of the Apostle Peter was found, but his remains as well. All right. Oh man, dodge the hijack. An objective analysis of the result of Vatican excavations demonstrated all of these claims to have been false. Again, false. They've been debunked them. They they debunked them. They caught them lying. You hear that? They caught them lying, guys. Pope Pius even had to make a radio announcement on the 24th of December 1950 where he had acknowledged the impossibility of making any veracious claims about the unearthed human bones belonging to the apostle. All right, he had to kind of say, yeah, sorry guys, we were wrong. The location of the town of Emmaus, near which Jesus is said to have appeared before his disciples after the resurrection, defies all attempts of being determined. The place of the transfiguration of Jesus, Mount Tabor, also remains impossible to locate. Even the location of Golgotha is doubted by historians. Schick in his Geschichte des Untergangs der Antike Welt, History of the Ancient World's Decline, 1900, wrote that we have no intention of picturing his Christ's earthly destiny. All the issues of the origins of Christianity are so complex that we are glad to have the opportunity and the right to leave them well alone. Let's not worry about the origins of Christianity. Let's just leave them alone. A convenient stance, and one that has got absolutely nothing to do with science. The archaeologist Schwegler sums up in the following way: this is where the tragedy begins for the believer, whose primary need is to know the place on earth where his Savior had lived and suffered. But it is the location of the place of his, Christ's death, that remains covered in impenetrable darkness. If we're to think in archaeological categories, all right? Hey, much respect and gratitude to you, Frank. Appreciate it. Thank you for the donation. Apparently, there is no possibility of determining the location of the cities of Nazareth and Capernaum, as well as that of Golgotha, etc., on the territory of modern Palestine. It wasn't there, none of that stuff, guys. We shall quote the following noteworthy observation to sum up. Reading the literature related to evangelical archaeology leaves a strange impression. Tens and hundreds of pages are devoted to the descriptions of how the excavations were organized, what the location of the site and the objects relevant to the research look like, the historical and biblical background for this research, etc. And the final part, the one that is supposed to cover the result of the research, just contains a number of insubstantial and obviously embarrassed phrases about how the problem was not solved, but there's still hope, etc. It can be said categorically and with all certainty that not a single event described in the New Testament had any valid archaeological basis for it. All right. Hey, the New Testament, hey, we always stick with the Torah, try to keep the code. Who said we needed a New Testament? Who said we really needed a new? What happened with the code? What was wrong with the code? We ask yet again, it is correct to search for the traces of the events described in the New Testament. In the Middle Eastern Palestine? Could they have been taking place somewhere else? All right. One more time, guys. I'm going to ask you now. I've been asking you. I've been telling you, though, and asking you. Is it correct to search for traces of the events described in the New Testament in the Middle Eastern Palestine? Could they have taken place somewhere else? Yo, those pesos, they switched it up, yo. AKA Josephus, AKA Paul, huh? Huh? All right. We're going to go on to chapter 10 on the next installment of this series, guys. That was a lot of drop we went through. A lot of good drop to correlate with the previous parts and all the other research we've done in the last couple of years. You guys can see. I mean, if it's not there, we know it's real history, though. It doesn't mean it's fake. We know it's real history. It had to have been somewhere else, guys. And look at all these undocumented ruins, undocumented places. They're still finding stuff on the LiDAR technology. They're finding how many they found? 60,000 temples in the Petan region alone, that in this little area. What do you mean they haven't found, you know, all these places, right? All these towns, all these cities. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. We're about to find out a lot. And it's 2024, right? Uh-oh. The alignment, the eclipse. Oh yeah, the revealing. The time is here. Oh yeah. The issue with chronology. With Anatoly Fomenko. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed the reading today. I'm just looking at the chat because I wasn't able to, look through the chat and see who was here this whole time. But I thank everybody that came through. That was, just 2 hours. All right. So, yeah, we did 2 hours of reading. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Yuck. Glad you guys enjoyed it. Tlatoni, what do you mean? What do you mean Fomenko got good drug mixed with Russian? I didn't see any Russian nationalism or secrets in here. You're like kind of generalizing, Tlatoni. This is what I mean about people talking bad about, what part of where we read did it have any Russian nationalism? Like, you make no sense on that one, bro. Like, come on, bro. Come on, bro. What's up, Platoni? You still there? Come on, bro. Talk to me in the back chat, man. Why are you saying that, man? I know he says Jerusalem and everything is there. I mean, people got their biases, but we didn't read that in these chapters. So no need to even bring this. Ain't about Fomenko. Guys, this ain't about Fomenko. None of this is always about one source, guys. Come on, man. So a lot of things does not need to be said because you're just trying to, it's almost like you may not be doing it intentionally, but you're almost trying to discredit what I'm reading. You're trying to stain the person when we didn't read nothing like that. I just read for 2 hours. We didn't read nothing about no Russian nationalism, man. What you talking about, bro? Don't generalize like that. Yeah, that makes me want to go out with Netflix. I think I'm gonna go out with Netflix. Yeah. I'm gonna go out with Netflix. All right. Tell me that I can't. Tell me that I can. All right. Tell me that I can. That's the name of the song. Chew the meat and spit out the bone, Tlatoni. You know what I'm saying? And if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. Did your mama teach you that? Did your mama teach you that? Why everybody gotta hate on Fomenko, man? Like, everybody got their biases. What I just read in the last, how many chapters did we just read? 4 chapters? Like, I didn't see, that was a lot of drop. I don't know what you're talking about, man. Anyways, purify your mind. That's what's up. Free your mind. Purify your mind, man. Generalizations will be your doom. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Thanks for tuning in once again. Appreciate everybody that tuned in today. Again, bendiciones, blessings, bendiciones. Hawa.
Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts, I pop off when I hear people say I cannot. I get off to the thought of proving everyone wrong, I won't stop to the top, so you better back off and get lost. I'ma stay loud, stay proud, never running out, never heading south. I'll be spreading out, call it word of mouth, can't put me down, I'll be getting loud. You can have it douse, not what I'm about, have your cloud, it be raining now. I keep making sound, go another round, I'm legend bound, can't stop me now. You don't wanna fuck with me. A slow burn like a deceive. Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you couldn't believe. Just tell me that I can. 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 Anything negative, cause I just wanna hear it out your mouth, yeah. Give me fuel, it's a tool that I use to go ahead and run my mouth, yeah. I take shots, I take loss, I make shots, I miss lots. That's how you get big box, you get yachts, you swing lots and pop off a big shot. I ain't done chasing, got big dreams, bigger things, impatient. Who's at the top think they need replacement? Who's at the top think I'm gonna erase, let's face it. I don't give up quick, I don't give up, I won't give up this. Cause I know that I want it, know that I'm on it, I'll make it, I promise. You don't wanna fuck with me. A slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and I'll show